I think we can get started. Thank you everyone for tuning in to our second ever virtual CovetSocial. We have some really exciting stuff that we're going to cover today. It's been highly requested that we do more of a deep dive into the tech part of Covet and how things come to life. So since we just released our big hair accessory feature update, which I hope you're all enjoying right now, I know I am.
I'm enjoying it.
Using hair accessories for pretty much every challenge now, which is super fun, but we wanted to deep dive into that a little bit and kind of show you how that came to life. Just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. We do have a lot of people tuning in today, and it's just going to be a panel format. So sadly, we won't be able to see your faces for this one, but you do have a really good group here today. So get right to it. Like I said, you have a really good group. Sarah, do you want to do a quick intro?
I'm just so excited to see all of these people's names. I wish I could see people's faces, but yeah, no, I'm Sarah. I'm the GM of Covet Fashion. I know I've met some of you in person and maybe some of you through the game, and I'm just super excited that you're here to join us today. We've got such a great presentation, so I'm looking forward to spending time with you, and hopefully somewhere in the near future we can meet in person again.
Perfect. So I'll let each of the panelists introduce themselves before they give their talks, but just from a high level, you'll first hear from Melanie, who's our Director of Product Management, and she'll talk you through all the design and how this feature came to life. And then we'll pass things off to Martin, who's our Director of Engineering, and he'll talk about the actual technical implementation around it. And then we'll wrap things up with Didi, who's our Director of Content and Brands, and she'll talk about how everything actually came to be in the game and as you see it. So that was a quick overview, and with that, I will pass things off to Melanie.
Cool. Well, hi everyone. This is my first virtual CovetSocial as well, so I'm super happy to be here. And yeah, you don't even know how happy it made me to just see your comments in the chat that you love the hair accessory flow. That's so great. But yeah, so I am the Director of Product Management. I've been on the Covet team for about 3 years now. And as a product manager, my primary focus is really on figuring out what our business goals should be each year, and then creating new features for the game that help us accomplish those goals. So by new feature, I basically mean like any kind of change or addition to the game. So this can be as simple as a new button, or it can be a whole new system like Prop Shop. And today, I'm really excited to talk to all of you about our newest feature, the hair accessory flow, and just sort of our team process for creating that and getting it in the game. Next slide, please. So all of our features basically just start with an idea, and the Covet leadership team, we all play Covet every day. So we're always thinking like, oh, we want to change this, we want to fix this. We have a whole, what we call our feature backlog of all of these ideas. And then we get a ton of ideas from the players. We love hearing all of your feedback on Facebook and on through our customer support, and that is a huge source for us. But very occasionally, a feature idea can actually be inspired by a bug or a glitch. And as I'm sure many of you know, that was the case for the hair accessory flow. Basically, this bug came out when we were all kind of on our holiday breaks last winter, and we started hearing about it from the customer support team, seeing it on the Facebook page, and we were kind of like, what is this thing? And so a bunch of us actually went on YouTube and found like the videos that the players had made as to how this bug works. And we replicated it ourselves in the game. And basically our conclusion was like, oh my gosh, our players are completely right. This is super fun. And it adds this whole new kind of creative layer to the game. So we decided then and there to just reprioritize our roadmap and make sure that that's kind of the number one feature we focus on, because we thought it was really amazing and important to give players this option to create these gorgeous new kind of hair accessory hairstyle combos. The only problem with that bug was that the process, or what we call the user flow, to create those combos was just really not pretty. And it involved, the undo redo button going back and forth between screens. So we really wanted to fix that first. And that brings me to the next stage of the design on the next slide, which is really to clarify and define our feature goals. So whenever we start a new feature, that's the first thing, is we really step back and think about what are we trying to achieve here. So in the case of the new hair accessory flow, we knew we wanted players to be able to use as many hair accessory hairstyle combinations as possible. But we wanted to do it in a way that was accessible. So basically something that all players could learn and could enjoy for free, and that was streamlined. So not too many taps, not super buggy like the original bug, and it was sustainable. So by sustainable, I mean it's something that we could kind of programmatically teach players with tutorials that they'd be able to learn, in the future. And it wasn't something that was going to be super annoying to all of our players later down the line. So with those goals in mind, we moved on to the next stage, which is where Heather, who's our amazing UIUX artist, she and I basically go into a room. She has her sketch pad, and we basically just start brainstorming, like, okay, how could we make this work? Like, where should the player tap? What would feel kind of natural? We think about, like, what should we sort of call this thing? What words should we use so that we can refer to this throughout the game and tutorialize it? That's when we kind of came up with, like, okay, customize makes sense. And we think about things like, what about all the players who just won't even have any interest in doing a customized hair accessory option? Are we going to impede the existing flow for them? And what about the original hairstyles that the hair accessories were drawn for? They're always going to look really good on those ones. So how do we still showcase those? And that's where we landed on, let's make those recommended hair and keep them on the default screen. So we kind of work through all those issues. And on this screen here, you can see some of the original mock-ups that Heather did. And we finished those. She even creates like a clickable prototype. And we move that to our next step, which is the spec. So a feature spec is basically like a giant plan that the whole team can follow to figure out how we're going to build this for the game. So we don't want to just hand this giant idea to the devs, because then there's always questions, things can be vague, and it can cause issues later. So we always try to make it as specific as possible and break it down into what we call user stories. So user stories are basically like really detailed tasks that are written from the user's perspective, just so everybody on the team kind of knows who the end customer is and what they should experience. So a user story example right here: as a player, when tapping on a color of hairstyle, I want the garment cell to be grayscale to indicate which color was selected. So that's some functionality that already exists on our color selection screen for hair. But even that, we have to write user stories for to make sure that that functionality gets transferred over to this new feature so that all the behavior is consistent. So we break everything down into user stories like that. We think about edge cases, like what happens if someone quits the game while they're in the middle of the flow? What screen should they see when they come back? What if the tutorial crashes? Things like that. We try to account for all of that in the spec. And then we think about tools, like, does the team need any tools in order to make this feature happen? In this case, this was a really big feature. The content team that manages all of the hair and makeup and art and hair accessories in the game, they needed a really big tool so they could actually QA these different combinations. And Didi's going to be diving into that part more in her section, but they spec'd that out for as part of this as well. And then we think about data, just super high level anonymized data. What are we going to need to know? Like, is this flow crashing? Is the tutorial showing up properly? And basically all of these things culminate in a rollout plan, which is planning the timing of how long this will take to be developed, when we're going to release it, how we're going to release it, how we're going to message it to players. All of that comes into the rollout plan. So Once we finish that, we pass the spec off to the dev team that comes back with their questions, feedback, and we iterate from there. So with that, I'll be handing it over to Martin to go through the next phase of development. But first, we have our first trivia question for all of you. So I'm going to ask this question, and then if you know the right answer, try to respond in the Q&A section on Zoom. And like Amanda said, they'll be looking out for the person who gets the answer right first, which will be announced later. So your question is, what was the first hair accessory ever released in Covet fashion?
They're on it.
Yay.
Super impressive.
Woo. Cool. Well, thank you, and I'll hand it to Martin now.
Great, thanks, Mel. So my name is Martin, and I'm the engineering director for Covet Fashion. I've been working on the title for 5 years, originally just managing the back-end team, and now manage all of the engineering. It's been quite a journey with us so far, and I'm glad we've got to this point and we're still growing and everyone's still enjoying everything we're putting out. So if we move on to the next slide, my job is to manage 3 engineering teams. These teams have different disciplines, they work in different languages, work on different technologies, but they all have to work in unison to deliver new features to the game. We have the client team who work on what we typically call UIUX, which is user interface and user experience. So this is the actual app that's on the phone that you will play, you will interact with, the buttons, the clicking and sending and receiving messages to the server. Then we have the server team. The server team is responsible for receiving the information from the client, validating it, saving it, sending inbox messages to you, calculating your prizes and distributing those. And then we also have the tools team, and the tools team build us applications that we use to make our jobs easier internally. So it's really critical that these 3 teams work well together so that we can deliver features on time and efficiently and bug-free. We move on to the next slide. So as Mel explained, we start with an idea, we work that into requirements and then into a specification, and those steps have a lot of iteration to make sure that we're actually planning for the right thing, that we're solving the right problems. And then the engineering team will get more involved and we will start doing our tech design and test planning. So this is all within that same spec document. It's all one big document that we work on our wiki. And we have a chat channel on Slack where we're getting notifications about changes. And everyone's staying informed to make sure that, as we progress through this process, any kinds of changes are communicated back up. And we tend to find stuff while we're designing the technology that might mean we've got to make changes to the way that we want the product to be. So there's a lot of constant communication between product and development there. And when we feel good about the tech design, then we move on to the actual writing of the code, the development stage. And really the bulk of the work is in the tech design. It's like writing an essay. You're not just going to jump in and start writing it. You're going to sketch out a plan. You're going to put in some bullet points and then gradually flesh them out. So by the time you actually write the essay, that's the easy part. You know what you're writing about. So the development stage tends to be quicker than the actual test planning stage a lot of the time. All the code that's written gets reviewed by another engineer, and then eventually we do what we call branch cut, where that branch of code is considered ready, and then we test and deploy that. And then ultimately, after release, we'll do performance analysis, which generates more ideas, and V2 and how we can progress further. So if we move on to the next slide, this is a Gantt chart. Our Gantt charts are pretty critical to our development process so that we know when to expect each stage to be finished, which things can be done in parallel, and ultimately when we can actually release a product. This is obviously a stripped down version that's been made to look nice for a slide, but it gives the general idea that there are 4 stages to this: the planning, development, testing, and release. and that each of those are broken down into the main tasks. So, in the case of this project, we started off building QA tool. We realized that there were going to be a lot of combinations of hair accessories to try and test to make sure they look good. So we started on that immediately, but we were also able to start on the UI/UX changes on the client at the same time. And then once that's ready, we can actually start working on the server code to make sure we validate your submissions as well. And then when all of that's done, the developers will double check all of their code, make sure they've tested everything. And then we hand it off to QA. Now, QA are the people that do the final sign off on anything that goes live. They're the people that give it the stamp of approval. Nothing goes live without their say. And then once they've finished with it, then we can move into the actual release. The release typically is made of 3 steps, which is the slow roll, full release, and the force update. So when we test locally on our own machines or even on our development servers with a few dozen people testing it, we don't really uncover some of the bugs that we're going to see when a few 100,000 users are playing this at the same time. So we do this slow roll where on Android, we will release it to about 10% of our players, and we'll monitor the graphs and everyone's checking to make sure that everything looks good and there are no crashes that we haven't discovered. And then we increase that to 50% and then 100%, and then we turn on iOS as well. So sometimes something goes out, we find a problem, we halt that slow roll. Typically it's pretty smooth, but it does help us find things that we won't have discovered in testing. And then we do a full release where everybody gets the game. And then what you often see, we see this where people notice that the App Store description has changed. It says there's a new feature. Everyone's getting really excited about it, but they can't see it in the game. What actually happens is we often release and then turn on a feature once we've hit that full release, because what we don't want is people that happen to have updated to see a feature versus other people that haven't updated yet. So once everyone's on the new version, and we do the force update to bring everyone up to the new version, then we'll switch it on, and everybody gets access to it then. If we move on to the next slide. So we don't just do a 3-month burst of work in one go. We work in a methodology called Agile, and we actually break everything down into 3-week chunks. And during those 3 weeks, there'll be 2 weeks of development and 1 week of testing. And this allows us to hand stuff off to QA for testing in small chunks rather than be like, okay, here's 3 months worth of work, just test it all now. And it becomes complicated and we end up with lower quality, higher bugs if that's the case. So we do these 3-week chunks, and you can see here that during week 1, when we're developing, we're actually typically releasing the previous sprint at the same time. During week 3, when we're testing the work we've just finished, we're planning the following sprint as well. So that allows us to just have a regular train leaving the station with some work on it that can be tested and iterated on. So great, that's going to bring us to our second trivia question. So everyone get ready on chat to answer the question. Fastest person to get closest answer wins. Question is, which hair accessory gets used the most? Which hair accessory gets used the most?
Oh, lots of votes for Flower Crown.
Those answers are coming in fast and furious.
They're on it.
All right. Jane will have to pick which was the fastest answer in chat and QA.
I haven't actually seen the correct answer yet, so keep the guesses coming.
Great. So thanks for listening. I'm going to pass over to Didi, who's going to talk more about our content.
Hi, everyone. My name is Edie. I'm the Director of Content and Brands at Covet Fashion. And my team is mostly responsible for producing all the style challenges and garments in the game, as well as managing all the brand partnerships we have at Covet. So for this hair accessory feature, my team is mostly responsible for phases after development, after we get the handoff from the engineers all the way to launch. So I'm here to give you a little bit more insight into our processes and what it takes for us to finally launch this feature. But I'll start with another trivia question first, just to mix things up. If everyone can be ready for the third question, while you can still figure out the answer to the second one. The third trivia question is, how many hair accessories we have features flowers? And this probably takes a little bit of tallying. Wow, so fast.
Chat is blowing up.
All right, well, let's continue on with the presentation. Can we go to the next slide, please? So first, I want to talk about how we design each hair accessories in the game. There are some of the examples. Next slide, please. Sorry. And these are some of the examples of how we ideate on hair accessories. Oftentimes, we have design ideas that match very specific outfits, like you see here. We see some of the Laurel's pieces as well here. Specific outfits, themes, or styles. In the next slide. And you can see here in the next slide that there are a wide range of variations we include within a single set of hair accessory in order to better communicate a specific theme. So like the galaxy design here, these are, we try to provide different variations because the whole concept is around galaxy. So it will be stars, it will be flowers. These are just kind of better to convey this theme. And same with the butterfly crown, where we have different colors of butterflies and they fly in different ways to really convey this really romantic hair accessory design that we have. So this is kind of how we approach all of our hair accessory designs. And next, I want to ask you all a question. This is not part of the trivia contest. This is just a poll that you should see on your screen now. And it's just for fun. How many hair accessories do you think there are in Covet? Wow, already half of your answer already. I'll give it 10 more seconds. All right. So a lot of you answered it correctly. Next slide, please. We have a total of 120 hair accessories so far released since 2016. That's the first time we launched hair accessories. And there are a total of 600 variations within these 120 hair accessory sets, which are all the different designs within the same set. And on top of that, Covet currently have a total of 407 different hairstyles in the game. So if you do the math here, you multiply the variations by the total number of hairstyles we have in the game. There are a total of 244,200 combinations. And what we had to do for this hair accessory feature was to test each of the 244,000 combinations to make sure that we can uphold the visual fidelity in the game, make sure it doesn't look buggy, everything still look as good as we can get. As we seem similar standards to our garments and also our hair and makeup. So besides product design and engineering work, this is one of the biggest reasons why this feature took several months to be ready. Next, I'll go more in depth into why we have to test these combinations. As you all know, in each of the hair accessory sets, there are at least 5 designs that fit specifically to 5 hairstyles. So we label them, as Melanie mentioned earlier, as recommended hairs. These are custom designed, specifically drawn around the hairstyles that we have picked. And because of how these hair accessories are layered against other parts of the outfit, the placement of the specifically designed hair accessory cannot be changed. So you see in the middle here, we are just straight applying the same placement of that hair accessory to a non-customized, or I'm sorry, non-recommended hairstyle. So this is when the things might look a little ill-fitting, and also why we have to look at every single combinations to check to see if there are any funny placements. In this slide, there aren't any, these just happen to work really perfectly, but there are also some examples of things that don't look as perfect. Next slide, please. Here I'm showing you some combinations that we did not allow in the game due to the wrong placement on non-recommended hairstyles. So as you can see, some of these shows very obvious visual gaps, like the Galaxy Clip hair accessories on the top left-hand corner. You see this white space behind our model, and that's a cutout to fit the recommended hair, which is the very voluminous, long hair. So you see the outline in that white space here. And some of that, and these are some of the hair accessory that looks very buggy, very funny, so we don't want to allow it in the game. And then some of these are just logically doesn't make sense, like the Santa hat in the middle lower picture here. The bun should not be outside of the hat. These are all the things that we're looking for when we do all the testings, all 244,000 of them. Next slide, please. So what kind of help, kind of tools do we have to test these? Here, I want to show you our precious hair accessory tester that Martin's team have helped build for us. And this part, we just first choose the hair accessory we're testing, the level we're testing, and then we go through each one and check or uncheck the combinations we think shouldn't be allowed. So this has been a huge undertaking involving the entire Covet team. And you can see this is just the first 3 pages we have, but there are like tens of thousands of pages that we've gone through. So we're super grateful that the entire Covet team came together. Basically rolled up our sleeves and just got through on testing for within a month and a half. And in the end, we're very, very happy with the results and how we managed to release this feature. But it is a ton of work, and I know some of the combinations, some of the tests, the decisions we made, whether it's allowed or not in the game, are not always perfect. But this is, we're doing the best we can to try to include as many combinations as possible into the game. So I hope you're all having fun playing with this feature, and then hope that you're enjoying all the creativity that this feature brings.